The alarms began before dawn, harsh metallic cries echoing through the galactic defense spire as Ryan woke to the feeling of a future that wouldn't stay still. A flickering horizon of collapsing ships, panicked distress signals, and an enemy no one recognized yet. He staggered from his bunk with the weight of 5 different futures pressing on his skull, each one branching, splitting, dying in fire, and all of them pointed toward one impossible truth. Someone, somewhere, had learned how to bend the 5-second window he relied on, and they were using it against the galaxy. The corridors swarmed with alien soldiers of every species, Vargans bristling with battle plates, Sylphi drifting like living mist, insectoid hex skittering along walls, each wondering why the fleet's sensors detected no invaders, no ships, no signals, yet every probability engine screamed of incoming destruction. Only Ryan understood the feeling. The enemy wasn't here yet, but they were close enough that his future sense was trembling like a taut wire. In the command chamber, the grand strategist demanded answers, but Ryan simply pointed upward, to where 5 seconds later, the entire capital shook with the impact of a warp displacement shockwave as a massive tear ripped open in space above the station. From the tear poured ships, sleek, black, silent, like blades of night cutting through reality. The alien officers panicked, shouting that no species had technology like this, no faction possessed warp-slicing engines, but Ryan felt the truth hit him like a physical blow. These weren't ships from another faction, these were ships from another future. The war he had sensed for months wasn't coming from outside the galaxy. It was trying to rewrite the galaxy from the timeline ahead of his own. The station shook again as the first dark ship fired an antimatter beam directly into the defense grid, disabling it before anyone could react, except Ryan, who pulled the strategist aside a moment before a falling support beam would have crushed him. "You will direct the fleet," Ryan said, voice shaking. "I'll tell you where they'll strike before they strike." And so began a battle the galaxy had never prepared for, the kind where the enemy was always 5 seconds ahead of every defense, every missile, every maneuver, except one human who saw 5 seconds ahead of them. Ryan ran through the control deck like a man possessed, shouting warnings at the exact instant they were needed. "Move the dreadnought left," and the dreadnought slid aside just before a beam carved open the void where it had been. "Rotate shields on Sector 9," and the shield snapped into alignment as a barrage exploded harmlessly against them. "Evacuate Hangar Delta," and a pulse of dark energy annihilated the empty space. The aliens stared in disbelief, not at the enemy, not at the destruction, but at the human weaving through the future like a thread pulling the galaxy away from annihilation. The strategist's orders, guided by Ryan's impossible precognition, held the line longer than physics should have allowed, but still the Dark Fleet pushed harder, adapting, learning, recalibrating their attack patterns every second. Ryan felt the tremors in his skull increase. Futures were splitting faster than he could track. One path showed the station collapsing. Another showed the fleet in flames. Another showed Ryan himself dying in the next breath. Another showed him taking command of a ship he had never seen before. The pressure built until he tasted blood, until the lights around him blurred, until the future itself twisted like a storm of images. And then he saw her. A figure standing aboard the lead dark ship, humanoid but wrong, like someone carved a human shape from shadow. She looked directly at him, across space, across time, as if she too could see 5 seconds ahead, as if she recognized him. When she lifted her hand, Ryan felt a jolt of pure terror because the future stopped completely. His vision went white. His ability, his one advantage, died in an instant. When the world snapped back into clarity, he gasped for breath, blind to what was coming, cold with the realization that the enemy commander had just erased his power. The dark fleet changed formation, shifting into a spear point that pierced through the defense battalion, destroying 3 cruisers in seconds. The strategist shouted, "Human, what do you see now?" And Ryan, shaking, terrified, suddenly ordinary, answered, "Nothing. She took it from me." The chamber froze. If Ryan couldn't see ahead, the galaxy would fall. But just as fear swallowed him, a spark flickered in the darkness of his mind, a single echo, faint, broken, not a future, but a memory of one. The Shadow Commander's gesture, the pulse she released, the way the future had died. Ryan understood it. The enemy wasn't seeing the future, they were controlling it, narrowing possibilities, collapsing timelines, forcing a single path in which they always won. But that control required precision, required focus, required the Shadow Commander to track the same 5-second horizon as Ryan once did. And that meant one thing: if Ryan could distract her, if he could create chaos, her control would break. He grabbed a comm line. "All ships," he said hoarsely, "fire everything, everywhere, at random." Aliens screamed objections. The strategist grabbed him. "Human, that is suicide." "No, it's noise." And the moment the fleet unleashed a storm, missiles, beams, flak, bursts of gravity charges, Ryan felt it. The future flickered back, blurry, chaotic, but alive. The Shadow Commander faltered under the storm of randomness she couldn't predict. The next 5 seconds returned to him, not sharp, not clean, but enough. "Now!" Ryan shouted. "Hit their left flank. No, their right. Now vent the starboard reactors. Rotate shields. Dive, climb, fire!" His commands came in a torrent as he rode the unstable wave of scrambled futures, guiding the fleet like a mad conductor orchestrating chaos. The Shadow Commander staggered, and Ryan felt her losing her grip on the timeline, her shields failing. For the first time, she feared him, the galaxy's strongest enemy commander, undone by a human with a glitch in his brain. Ryan seized the moment. "Strategist," he yelled, "full assault on the flagship, now!" The fleet obeyed. Energy beams converged. Missiles swarmed. A dreadnought rammed through the remaining escorts. The flagship erupted into a bloom of burning darkness. And at that moment, Ryan saw the future again, clear and bright as the Shadow Commander's presence vanished. The tear in space shuddered, destabilized, and collapsed inward, pulling the dark fleet with it until nothing remained but drifting embers. Silence swept across the galaxy. The battle was over. The impossible enemy defeated. The future saved by a human who could only see 5 seconds ahead. But as medics carried Ryan from the command deck, he felt one last echo, one last warning, one last future. The Shadow Commander was not dead. She had escaped into a timeline still forming. She was learning, evolving, and next time she would not underestimate humans. Ryan smiled weakly. "Good," he whispered, "because neither will we." And as the galactic fleet rebuilt around him, as species once arrogant, now bowed in respect, as legends spread of the human who fought the future and won, one truth echoed through every world, every ship, every war council. Humans didn't need overwhelming power. They only needed 5 seconds.
They said humans were the blind species of the galaxy, slow, emotional, impulsive, unable to process quantum data streams, unable to predict probability fields, unable to comprehend the fractal logic of the Vexari, the cold arithmetic of the Drathel, or the gravitational intuition of the war-bred Vargans. But when Cadet Ryan Hale stepped into the Hall of Ascension for his evaluation, every alien present would soon learn that humans didn't need perfect logic, quantum intuition, or enhanced senses. They only needed 5 seconds, because 5 seconds was enough to dodge a plasma bolt, enough to avoid a trap, enough to strike before an enemy even knew they were in danger, enough to change the whole board in a single breath, enough to break a war before it began. Ryan stood silently while the aliens whispered about how unimpressive he looked. Short hair, tired eyes, basic human uniform, no cybernetic implants, no augmented neurons, nothing but a strange neurological condition humans barely understood. Microtemporal dissociation, a glitch in his sensory cortex that caused him to see events 5 seconds early, like echoes from a future that hadn't happened yet, but already lived inside his mind like a memory he hadn't formed. When the examiner, a tall crystalline Zyre with refracted rainbow limbs, activated the trial chamber, Ryan felt it instantly. A flickering ripple, a breath that didn't belong, a footstep that hadn't yet touched the floor, a spark that hadn't yet been fired. He whispered, "Left," and the moment he stepped aside, a plasma lance burst out of a hidden panel exactly where his chest had been. The Zyre's facets dimmed in shock. No species could dodge a star-forged training weapon without reading its power buildup. No species except one that had already lived the next 5 seconds. Ryan moved calmly through the maze as attack drones rose like metal serpents. Before they fired, he was already not there. Before the floor collapsed, he was already leaping. Before the security barrier activated, he was already sliding under it. Aliens in the observation deck leaned forward, Vargans with armor thicker than bone steel, Sylphi whose thoughts rippled like ocean currents, Kylari priest minds who could predict 10 million possibilities, yet not one could understand why this human moved like water slipping between futures. The Zyre examiner triggered level 5, then level 6, then level 7. The chamber transformed into a storm of death, walls folded into spirals of blades, drones swarmed like hornets, gravity inverted and shattered, light bent into illusions, but Ryan almost looked bored as he walked, ducked, dodged, stabbed, turned, like every motion was rehearsed in advance. When he reached the core, he placed his hand on it before the chamber even finished the final formation. The Zyre stuttered. Impossible. No species passes level 7 without augmentation. Ryan shrugged. I saw it play out, so I just followed the better version. Aliens murmured in confusion. Followed the better version? What did that mean? Before they could ask, the grand strategist of the Galactic Defense Fleet, a towering obsidian-skinned Drathel, descended with heavy steps like falling asteroids. Human, what exactly do you perceive? Ryan hesitated. It was always difficult to explain. I don't see the whole future, he said slowly. Just a flash, a vibration, a tiny moment that hasn't happened yet. 5 seconds, no more. Laughter erupted in the chamber, sharp, mocking, dismissive. 5 seconds? A Vargan warlord scoffed. That is nothing, worthless. But Ryan didn't argue. He didn't need to, because at that exact moment, he felt something wrong, like a dark pulse echoing through the air, a future scream, a flash of metal, a death that had not yet happened. Someone was going to die in the next 5 seconds. Ryan didn't think, he moved. His hand shot out, grabbing the grand strategist's arm and yanking him backward, just as a cloaked assassin dropped from the ceiling, energy blades slicing the air where the Drathel's neck had been. Aliens froze. The assassin had bypassed every security measure in the Ascension Hall, every shield, every scanner. A perfect infiltration, a perfect kill. But Ryan had already seen it, 5 seconds early. The assassin hissed and lunged at him. Ryan ducked before the blade even moved, kicked before the attacker stepped, punched before the enemy swung. To everyone watching, it looked like Ryan was fighting a ghost he already knew. To Ryan, it was simply playing out an answer he'd already been shown. The assassin never stood a chance. Ryan caught the moment the future shifted, the instant before the assassin activated a suicide detonator. He ripped the device away, hurled it into the air, and dove behind a shield panel just as it exploded in a burst of violet fire. Silence fell, heavy and absolute. Aliens stared at the small human who had just saved the most important military leader in the galaxy. The Drathel lowered himself to one knee, a gesture no human had ever earned. "Your weakness," the strategist rumbled, "is the most dangerous weapon I have ever seen." Every alien in the hall felt the same chill. 5 seconds. 5 seconds was everything. News of the event spread across the fleet within hours. Human cadet predicts assassination. Human cadet defeats elite killer. Human cadet processes micro-temporal anomalies without technology. But rumors twisted into something even more terrifying. Humans can see the future. Not all humans, just this one. But fear didn't care about accuracy. Fear grew like wildfire. Suddenly, entire species were whispering what-ifs. What if humans could predict every diplomatic move, every battle formation, every ambush, trap, counterattack? What if a human soldier could walk onto a battlefield and simply know where not to stand? The high command needed answers. They placed Ryan under observation, interrogation, examination. But nothing they asked changed the truth. The future whispered to him, only barely, only briefly, only 5 seconds ahead. But that was enough. Enough to break enemy formations, enough to avoid every ambush, enough to predict every false move, enough to stop wars before they began, enough to frighten species who once mocked humans as primitives. And as Ryan slept that night, exhausted from the tests, he felt another echo, one that chilled him to his core. A future he wasn't prepared for, a flash of a starship burning, screams of an entire fleet, shadows descending, a war no one saw coming, a war that would begin in 5 seconds, then 5 months, then 5 years. Time was no longer linear to him, it rippled like warning waves. Humanity wasn't ready, the galaxy wasn't ready, but the future was coming anyway. And Ryan Hale, the human who saw 5 seconds ahead, would be the only one who could stop it.